down. I know you've been hurting. This spiral's a lonely road. Take my hand and listen. Maybe one day you'll cross paths and you both got new perfumes. And the life you used to live is left within that old apartment. Maybe nothing's said and done, and your chest is set on fire. But I promise you there's nothing but a cold-hearted liar. Cold-hearted liar. I know you don't want to hear. Your heart still does beat. The way it looks at you, every touch you give. Now you gotta listen. Maybe one day you'll cross paths and you both got new haircuts. And the jacket you used to borrow on someone else's shoulders. Maybe then the nights are clear and your heart is set on fire. But I promise you there's nothing but a cold-hearted liar. Maybe one day you'll cross paths and you both got new perfumes. And the life you used to live is left within that old apartment. Maybe nothing's said and done, and your chest is set on fire. But I promise you there's nothing but a cold-hearted liar. Cold-hearted liar.
Hi. Ooh. Hi guys. I'm in a new place again. Is anyone surprised? I'm currently leading tours around Europe for American teenagers, so I have been all over the place with 11 teens, and this is our last stop. We're in Paris right now. I'm looking out at a cemetery, if you want to see my view. Not too bad. We got here yesterday in the midst of the Tour de France, which was chaotic but really fun. And yesterday also happened to be my 27th birthday. So I spent that mostly on a train from Interlaken to Paris. And then my coworker on this trip actually helped organize a surprise for me, and my partner came out and surprised me, which was completely shocking. Didn't know what to do with myself for a solid 30 seconds.
Here's one of them.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but I believe my last wrap up ended in March. So over April, May, June, and July, I've read exactly 10 books. And I had my first DNF of the year as well. It takes me a lot to officially DNF a book. I often read books very slowly. For example, with Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector, I've literally been reading that for months. But even though I haven't picked it up in the last few weeks, I'm not calling it a DNF because I do have every intention of finishing it. It's just taking me a long time. Yeah, so it takes me a lot to actually DNF a book and put it down and have no intention of finishing it. I thought this time I would go in order from least to most likely to read from the author again. So we'll be starting strong with my first official DNF of the year. I got, I think, about 30% into this book and just could not be bothered to continue. And that is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by Holton. I was craving something light and fun and magical, because I've been waiting for The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping to be available at my library for weeks. So I wanted to get something else that would kind of scratch that itch in my brain, and I did not like it. Basically, it's about this woman, Cecilia, and she is part of this society with her aunt of like pirates, but Victorian women and like kind of witches, because their houses can fly. And it starts with someone, a very handsome someone, trying to assassinate our main character. And I was so bored by this and put off, because from the moment characters are introduced, you can tell exactly the type of dynamic the author wants you to perceive. And it just felt a little spoon-fed, and I wasn't a fan of that. I felt like the character building and the relationship building wasn't organic at all. And the characters would always say these little witticisms as if they knew that the reader would be like, oh, that's funny, she's not like other Victorian women, you know? Kind of the type of thing that Veronica Speedwell would say, or the main characters in Sangu Mandanna's books, who wrote The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping and The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, kind of like how they would act, but in a very unnatural way, that it didn't feel like it was the character reacting to a situation at hand. It felt like it was a line that the author had written and wanted to shoehorn in somewhere. So basically 30% in, I wasn't interested in the heist aspect. I wasn't interested in the relationships, I wasn't interested in the adventure, and I wasn't interested in the characters. So I put it down and decided I didn't want to pick it back up. India Holton is someone who now, if I saw a book that seemed like it had an interesting premise to me, because the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels did seem really interested to me, and it was the execution that disappointed me, it would disincentivize me from picking up one of her books in the future. Yeah, that was the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. With that said, that book was my only dud of the past 4 months, which is pretty great. So basically all of the authors from now on are authors that I would read again. It's just more about how deliberately I'll seek them out. So the second book is Lost and Lassoed by Lyla Sage. And you may be wondering, Allegra, why are you reading another romance? You don't like romance. And my boyfriend has asked me this as well, but he put it well, that romance books are kind of like my version of reality TV. It's light and fluffy, and I don't have to think about it too much. I mean, there are obviously romances that are a lot deeper, but the romances that I tend to go for when I'm looking for that are lighter romances. I gave Lost and Lassoed 2.5 stars, so very in the middle for me. Like, don't feel any sort of way. I'm not upset that I read it. I'm not happy I read it. I haven't really thought about it at all. And I had to go back and read my review to remember what I liked and disliked about the book. Which is also why Lyla Sage wouldn't be high on my list, because, as I'll talk about in a minute, I have other romance authors that I would be more interested in picking up future books from. Although the cowboy aspect and the horses and stuff was really fun to read about. I gave Lost and Lassoed 2.5 stars because it felt very formulaic. I felt like everything was set up to then come back later, and you could really tell when it was going to be set up to come back. You could tell who was being set up to have a future book. You could tell what grand gestures were being set up, and that didn't make them any less cute, but it didn't feel organic. And also there was just too much smut for me. I don't love reading it. I know that's a me problem, but especially the epilogue, I was like, okay, why are we having an epilogue that's just like another chance to show them having sex? So that was Lost and Lassoed. I definitely am not giving up on the author. It's not someone that I'm gonna purposefully not pick up books from. I wouldn't seek her out as an author, but it also wouldn't turn me off reading another one of her books. Another book I read for one of my vlogs many moons ago was The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. I have thought about this book so little that I do feel like it's closer to a 4 than a 4.5 star, which is a bummer. That's also why I have this author pretty low on the list in terms of if I would read from them again. So if you don't know, The Ministry of Time is a sci-fi about a time when the government has found a way of time traveling. They're basically conducting an experiment on people from the past by bringing them into their future, so the current day, and monitoring them for their physical and mental health, and then seeing how they react to the move. The people who are taken out of their time are called expats. The main character is responsible for one of these expats, so he has to move into her house. They kind of become roommates, and she's also in charge of monitoring him, and then their relationship blossoms, as well as her relationship and his relationship with the other expats and the other bridges, which are the people who are responsible for the expats. It's a story about the two main characters learning what they're willing to do for what they think is right. It talks a lot about history and what it means to change your beliefs and how you can learn from others. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the writing style. Although it was packed with information and plot, it moved slowly and lingered as much on the quiet moments as on the moments of adventure and action. And I really appreciate that. And I definitely would be interested in picking up another book by Kaliane Bradley. I don't know if I would actively seek it out and like have her on my list of authors to look out for, but if I found out that she was coming out with another book, it's something that I'd put on hold in my library. The next book is Left of Forever by Tarah Dewitt, and I gave this, well, I kind of struggled because I gave the last Tarah Dewitt book I read 3.5 stars, rounding up to a 4 on Goodreads, but I like this one better, but not enough for a 4-star. So I settled on a 3.75, but that feels overly specific. So I don't know. Regardless, it's a 4-star on Goodreads, and that's what matters. So this is about characters we met in Savor It who are divorced and about them finding their way back to each other. Basically, their teenage son is going to college in California, and on the way back from dropping their son at college, they are road tripping together back instead of flying back. They had their son very young. It was a teenage pregnancy, and then they got married, and then a few years later they separated, and I think at this point they've been separated for 5 or 6 years. So it's very much a second chance romance, which I've never read before, actually. So that was interesting. I didn't know how I would feel about it, but I really like how it's done in this book because it shows that the main characters, Ren and Ellis, have really changed and have worked through the things that caused tension in their relationship the first time. Obviously not everything has been solved, but the conflict and tension in this book isn't caused, at least not for extended periods of time, by miscommunication, which I appreciate because they're both in their 30s. You know, they've been together for years before they were separated, and so they really should be able to communicate by now, and they do show that they're able to do that. And the things standing in their way are like big life things, not petty miscommunications, misunderstandings. So I did put this on my alert list at the library, so I got a notification when it came in, and then I immediately put it on my hold list. So that says a lot. I mean, I am definitely interested in reading future books, at least in this little series. It's pretty clear who's coming next, but it's a book that I'll pick up and I'm excited to read when it comes out. Then I finally read The River Has Roots by Amal El-Mohtar. I've had it on Libby like 2 or 3 times now and just kept letting the hold expire because I couldn't decide if I wanted to read it on my Kindle or listen to it. I ended up listening to it, which I think was a good choice because there is some singing and music in it. I like the singing and the audio effects. So if that's something that doesn't bother you in books, I would definitely pick up the audiobook. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and what really shone in this is the writing style, which is what I was expecting. Amal El-Mohtar is one of the 2 authors that wrote This Is How You Lose the Time War, and that's the reason that I was interested in this book, because I love that book so much. And I do feel like I kind of missed the other author's voice, Max Gladstone, in this book, because obviously it's just written by one author, and I loved that back and forth between the 2 authors' voices. So that's nothing against Amal El-Mohtar. It is just that I loved This Is How You Lose the Time War so much, and that was because of the combination of their 2 ethereal voices. So I missed it a little bit in this book. This is a really short book, so I don't want to give too much away, because I really enjoyed going into it knowing pretty much nothing. And honestly, the synopsis tells you pretty much nothing. It's basically about these 2 sisters who are very close and how their relationship is tested by their different desires and priorities, and their devotion to each other and to their family has to compete with their desire for their own happiness. It has to do with fae and fairies, and it does feel very much like a fairy tale, but one of like Grimm's stories that have a much darker undertone. But if you love a book that has that magical whimsy, I think you would really enjoy this. It's a book that I would like to read again on my Kindle and be able to actually underline and highlight stuff, because I do feel like reading it multiple times, you'd get something out of it every time. They're an author that I would definitely pick up again, but I don't know that I would read it regardless of the intrigue of the story itself, if that makes sense. Then I read Faithbreaker, which is the 3rd in the Fallen Gods trilogy by Hannah Kaner. This is the conclusion to a trilogy, so I can't say much, but I will say that I gave it a very, very solid 4-star. I really enjoyed it. I thought the conclusion gave enough closure to be satisfying, but left enough open to be kind of realistic. I mean, it's a story about gods and magic and stuff, so it doesn't have to be too realistic, but it is also about war and suffering. And I appreciated that the trauma the main characters went to had a real impact that they then had to work through. I also continued to enjoy the characters and their relationships to each other. Kissin is still a badass, and I really love her, even though she's not always the most likable character. she's unlikable because she's headstrong and stubborn and impulsive. So she doesn't do dumb shit just to be stupid. She does it because it's in line with her character. This is a very mild spoiler, so if you don't want to know anything, I'll put on the screen when you should skip to. But I did see one of the big deaths coming. It did feel like it was the only way to get out of the story and to conclude was to have that specific character die. So it wasn't shocking at all, and I was just kind of waiting for it to happen. I wish that I had been more surprised by that, or it had been done in a different way, but I see why Hannah Kaner made the decision that she did, because there was really no other way to end the story. I used to be obsessed with fantasy, as I think a lot of people who were big readers when they were younger are, and I've kind of fallen out of it as I got older. The big fantasy series are really intimidating to me. I feel like I don't know where to start. There's so many different options of what order to read them in, and there's so much dense world building at the beginning that I feel like I have a hard time completely immersing myself in them again. And this trilogy really made me feel immersed in fantasy again for the first time in a while. So I do think that I would pick up basically any fantasy that Hannah Kaner came out with. If it wasn't a fantasy, I think that it would really have to appeal to me for a different reason, but I would definitely pick up any fantasy that she came out with. So that's why she's where she is on this list. Next, I finally got my hands on A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandanna, and I gave it 4 stars. I gave her last book, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, 5 stars, so I didn't love this one as much, but I still really enjoyed it. I love the atmosphere of her books. I like how she always makes the place that she's in feel like a character in and of itself. In both stories, the houses had their own character. I really love when inanimate objects, especially like houses and cars and stuff, are given some autonomy that impacts the story. The story is about our main character, Sarah Swan, who was a very, very powerful witch when she was younger. And then when she was 15, she used magic illegally to bring back her great aunt from the dead. And that resurrection cost her almost all of her magic. 15 years later, she still lives with her aunt and helps her aunt take care of this magical inn. She gets the opportunity to try to get her magic back. And that's the whole crux of the story, is she's trying to get her magic back to not only help herself, but also to like defeat the big bad evil who only she can defeat because she was the most powerful, and help her friends. I love the relationships, not only romantically, but also the platonic relationships in Sangu Mandanna's stories. I think the way the characters interact is one of the strongest aspects of her stories. I also love the casual queer representation in all of her stories, although I do really think that she should write a sapphic story. I think it would be so good. I'm not sure why these books work for me when they're a combination of 2 things that I usually don't love, which is cozy stories and romance. But I think it definitely has to do with the characters and their relationships to each other, and also their motivations and kind of the self-discovery aspect of these stories. Also, I really appreciated that the main male character and love interest is blonde, because my partner is blonde, and there's this whole discourse on social media about like blonde men and how men shouldn't be blonde and how that's embarrassing. Or maybe that's just the weird little pocket of the internet I've fallen into since having a blonde partner. Again, this story wasn't surprising in any way. All of the twists or the main decisions that were supposed to be really heart-wrenching and really surprising weren't surprising at all. I felt like it was quite obvious that that was the only way that the story could go in order to keep the message the same. I think another aspect that I really love about Sangu Mandanna's books is the found family aspect. I am a sucker for that. I think a lot of us are, and she does found family so incredibly well. You can see why everyone is connected to each other. I think sometimes there are bonds that feel very strong in friendship groups or found family, and you can understand why some of the characters are so close, and then the others just feel close because of proximity. Whereas in her books so far, every character has had a special connection that made sense to why they got so close and why they really relied on each other. And you can see how each of them need each other for different things. And I think that's really representative of real life. I mean, I have different friends who I want to surf with versus who I want to stay home and read a book with versus who I want to cry to or rant to or laugh to. And I think that's just a really realistic aspect of the relationship that humans have. So I really love seeing it represented so well. She's an author who I will definitely keep an eye on. If she puts out any more books, I'll do the same thing. I'll put it on hold at my library. I want to be notified right away because they feel like yummy little comfort books. They're like a muffin where it's so easy to eat and it makes you feel satisfied and cozy, and sometimes it's just what you need. Okay, I have 4 books and 3 authors left. So next on my list is Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. And I'd say this is definitively my favorite book that I've read in the past few months. It will definitely be one of my favorite books of the entire year. This is such an intimate look into people's lives and psyches and relationships. The hostages are put in the same position as the reader, where they have to learn about the motivations of these people. They're stuck in a house with them, going through the same circumstances. They're sleeping on the same floors, they're eating the same things, they're speaking with the same negotiators, and also trying to keep themselves entertained in this situation that feels almost never ending. And they all slip into this comfortable routine and almost fear it ending because they know it can't end well. This book talks a lot about circumstance and why people do what they do. And when you're in a position of privilege, it's easy to dismiss the captors as being bad or evil people, but you can't do that when you know their motivations and you learn why they've done what they do. I think Ann Patchett does a brilliant job at making you care about all the characters, regardless of what side of this conflict they end up on. It's a really quiet book. It's very monotonous, and that's the point. You're supposed to feel stuck in this house as well, getting bored, getting used to this new routine, and being lulled into this kind of false sense of security, while all the while you know that there has to be an ending, and it can't be a happy ending for everyone. So although it's a quiet, slow, intimate book, where so much of it is the daily lives of these characters and learning to coexist with these people who are so different from you, because the hostages are from all over the world. So although it's a quiet, monotonous book, you feel the end barreling towards you, especially as you get closer to the end of the book. It's like when you have a snowball and you push it down a hill and it just gets bigger and bigger and it goes faster and faster. And by the time you realize how much power it has, there's nothing you can do. You just have to wait and watch it smash at the bottom. And that's how it felt waiting for the end of this book. I felt almost breathless, waiting to see what happened, because you grow to love and care about and understand all these characters so well, but you also know that because of the nature of it being a hostage situation, it can't end well for everybody. There are books like Anxious People where it's also a hostage situation, but the tone is much lighter, and so you do think everyone can get out and live happy lives, but you can tell from the tone of this book that it's going to take a more realistic approach. So I absolutely adored this book. I will 100% read more by Ann Patchett, and the reason that she's lower on this list right now is because I don't have an active plan of picking up another one of her books. I have Tom Lake, but because this book was so all-consuming, I feel like I'll be slower to pick up another book by Ann Patchett rather than some of the authors higher on this list, because when I'm so busy and going all the time, I want a book that feels like a break for my brain, and Bel Canto was so all-consuming that it didn't feel like that at all. And so I'll have to be in the right place where I feel like I can give it the attention it deserves. The next 2 books are by the same author. They're installments 3 and 4 in the Neapolitan series by Elena Ferrante, the first of which is My Brilliant Friend. So these are The Story of a New Name and Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. I have a 4-book bind-up of it, so it's hard for me to distinguish the books from each other. I'm currently reading the final installment, and besides the first one, I've read these other 3 all over the course of the last few weeks, so they've kind of all blended together for me. As they're part of a series, I can't tell you exactly what happens in these books, but that doesn't really matter anyway. It's definitely more about the atmosphere of post-war Naples, and then as the books go on, post-war Italy and Europe and the world. But first and foremost, it's about the relationship between Elena and Lyla. The first book told the story of the girls growing up from probably around 5 to 16, and the next few books just follow their lives as they get older and the push and pull between both them to each other and them to the neighborhood that they grew up in. Seeing the power that they have over each other, but also the power that their home has over them, no matter how much they try to break away, is so interesting. And Elena Ferrante, I think, is brilliant that she makes you care so much about these characters who aren't very likable. I can't say that I like either main characters or any of the side characters, really. I don't think there's a single character in the entire series so far that I think, yeah, that person is a good person and everyone will like them. But you still have this burning desire to know what will happen to them and overcome all this adversity that they've had growing up in this neighborhood. So I gave the second book 4.5 stars and the third book 4 stars. And I'd say I'm like 50-60% through the last book. So even though I didn't give these books as high a rating as I gave Bel Canto, it's higher on my list because I'm actively reading another book by Elena Ferrante. So for me, it feels like I need to put that higher in terms of an author that I would pick up another book by. She does have other books, and I think that I will read them in the future, but after the series, I'm definitely going to take a break. Maybe go back and read the first book over again, because I read that almost a year ago now. And that one, there are so many characters that it's easy to get lost. Whereas now that I know all the characters and I know their relationships to each other, I'd be interested in going back and reflecting on how the relationships have evolved. The third book was my least favorite so far, mostly because Nino is a character who pisses me off to no end, and he's a major player in that book. So a lot of the time I was just frustrated. And the last book that I'm going to be talking about that I read in the last few months is The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. I finally got around to reading the 4th book in the Thursday Murder Club series, and I adored it. I love every single character in these books. I love the mysteries, I love the relationships, I love the humor, I love everything. And I will honestly pick up anything he writes, no matter how long or short it is, no matter what genre. I trust him implicitly to write a book that I love. So in The Last Devil to Die, our octogenarians are once again in the midst of a murder mystery and are running around town trying to figure out who murdered their friend. I don't think you can read these books without falling in love with the characters. I think if you only read the first one and then stop, yeah, maybe you don't care about them so much, but as you continue, you fall in love with all of them for different reasons. And for that reason, this book will break your heart, and Richard Osman is an asshole, but I would still pick up anything he writes. With Ann Patchett and Elena Ferrante, I feel like they're books that I want to own physical copies of. I also want to own the entire Thursday Murder Club series. I've actually bought each one of them because I knew that I would want them after, and so I didn't even bother waiting for my library. And I feel like that's an indicator of how much I love these books and love this author. I am controversially someone who unhauls almost all of my books under 4 stars. I just don't feel the need to have books around that weren't my absolute favorites. I'm sure that will change in the future, but right now, as someone who doesn't have a stable home to put all of my books in, it takes a lot for me to want to keep a book. So if I do want a physical copy of it, that means that I've really loved it. Yeah, so that is why The Last Devil to Die is the highest on my list, and Richard Osman is the author that I am most likely to read from again. Oh my god, I don't know if you heard that, but that is 100% my kids screaming in the hallway, which is not a good thing. So that's a sign that I have to go and figure out what's going on. So thanks for being here and listening to me talk about the books that I've read. I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these books. If there are any books on these authors' backlists that you think I should read, especially the authors that I've expressed interest in, I would love to know. So thank you for being here, especially with the inconsistency both of uploads and backgrounds. Yeah, hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.